The same sentence can be a gentle ask or a threat, depending on who can punish you after. That is the part people miss. Social friction is often not about the words. It is about status, power, and what a boundary will cost you.
Start with 3 simple definitions. Status is the social reading of relative standing.
Power is the ability to affect outcomes. A boundary is a declared or enacted limit on access, effort, attention, information, body, time, role, or consent. Those 3 variables interact constantly. They show up in meetings, families, friendships, hiring loops, investor conversations, group chats, and shared housing. They also show up in quiet moments. A delayed reply, a joke that lands strangely, a request that arrives as if it was already approved. Here is the first key insight. The same sentence has different weight depending on the speaker and the audience. "Can you handle this tonight?" is not the same request from a peer versus a manager. It is not the same from a client, a mentor, a parent, or a romantic partner. And it is definitely not the same from someone who controls your future access. So the decision problem is not whether power should exist. It will. The decision problem is whether power is being used within legitimate scope. Also, whether status is distorting truth, and whether boundaries can be stated and enforced without disproportionate cost. Next, learn to separate status from power. They often correlate, but they are not the same. Status is what the room believes about rank. Power is what actually changes your options, your costs, and your consequences. Status shapes how information moves. Low-status people often over-explain because they expect disbelief. High-status people can underspecify, and others will fill in the gaps generously. You can see status in small signals. People defer before an argument is even made. Heads turn toward one person after uncertain moments. Someone interrupts without penalty. Another person's delays are judged, while a high-status person's delays are excused. Power has its own signals. Someone controls scheduling, money, evaluation, access, or reputation. People look toward one person before answering a question. Decisions wait until one person weighs in. And an important detail, power is not only loud. Quiet power often matters more. The person who controls invitations or social legitimacy may never raise their voice. Now for boundaries, because boundaries are where status and power become personal. A boundary is not a preference stated with intensity. A preference says, "I would rather not." A boundary says, "I am not available for that." Then it connects that limit to action. So boundaries cover concrete domains: time, attention and labor, information and confidentiality, your role and ownership, your body and personal dignity, even the channel for certain topics. I do not discuss compensation details in group chat. Or, I need requests by Thursday if you want Friday delivery. Or, do not make jokes about my body. Or, I can advise on architecture, but I am not the owner of this delivery. Or, I can meet for 30 minutes, not 2 hours. The important line is this: a boundary without an enforcement path becomes a plea. If nothing changes when the limit is ignored, the system learns your limit is decorative. On the other side, a boundary with disproportionate enforcement becomes domination. The target is proportionality. The consequence should fit the violation and the risk. Once you have the basics, you can recognize recurring interaction patterns. Think of them as archetypes that show up across contexts. One is the status tester. They make small public moves, a slight interruption, a teasing remark, a dismissive joke. The goal is not the content. The goal is rank information. Who resists, who laughs, who looks away, and who complies. The response is deliberately low intensity at first. Name the behavior simply. Remove the audience reward. Do not give a long speech that turns into entertainment. Escalate only if the test repeats after you set a clear limit. A close cousin is the boundary tester. They treat your stated limit as an opening bid. They try persistence, charm, urgency, guilt, or confusion. The driver is expanded access with minimal accountability. Here the protocol is crisp. Restate the limit once, attach the consequence, then execute the consequence without extended debate. Debating is often the access they wanted. Another common figure is the deflector. You state a boundary and they redirect. Suddenly the topic is your tone, or your timing, or their intent, or your alleged sensitivity, or loyalty, or humor. The optimization is simple. Avoid accountability while keeping the original access pattern intact. If you get pulled into that side quest, you lose. So acknowledge the side issue once, if needed, then return to the limit. Something like, I hear you. The point remains I am not available for that. Then there is the scope creeper. This one is subtle and it hits competent people hard. A role, favor, task, or obligation expands gradually beyond the original agreement. Not with one big ask, with many small ones. Each one seems reasonable until you realize you are carrying an extra job. The fix is to re-anchor the original scope. Name the added request. Require explicit renegotiation before proceeding. Otherwise, the system updates your role silently and you pay the cost quietly. You will also meet the gatekeeper. They control access to people, information, approvals, rooms, opportunities, or legitimacy. Sometimes this is necessary. Sometimes it is political. Either way, guessing is expensive. So identify the specific gate being controlled. Clarify the criteria for passage. Then decide. You can appeal, you can route around, or you can disengage. One of the healthiest roles in a system is the rank translator. This person explains unstated hierarchy, hidden constraints, and the real decision path. They reduce coordination failure by making the system legible. Use them wisely. Ask for the decision map. Verify it against observable behavior. And avoid turning the translator into a private political weapon. If you use them to target others, you will lose a valuable source of reality. Finally, recognize legitimate authority. This is role-based power used within defined scope. It exists for coordination, safety, quality, and accountable execution. Not every uncomfortable request is misuse. The skill is to separate discomfort from abuse. Verify the authority structure, the scope, and the process. Then comply, challenge, appeal, or exit based on what is actually true. When pressure lands on a boundary, especially under power imbalance, you need a simple decision sequence. First, did a clear request, demand, joke, touch, disclosure request, deadline, or role expansion occur? If not, keep observing. If yes, ask whether it falls within legitimate authority or the relationship's agreed scope. If it is outside scope, say so plainly. That is outside my role, agreement, or availability. If it is inside scope, evaluate cost, risk, and access level under current conditions. You might accept, you might negotiate, or you might set a constraint and offer an alternative. Then watch the key diagnostic. After you state the boundary, do they respect it without penalty, ridicule, pressure, or retaliation? If yes, update trust upward and continue. The boundary did its job. It clarified the system. If no, shift from persuasion to protection, especially when the stakes are high. Safety, employment, housing, reputation, legal exposure, or major dependency change the playbook. In high-risk contexts, do not rely on convincing someone who benefits from ignoring you. Document what matters. Reduce exposure. Seek process. Involve a trusted third party. Or exit through the safest available route. If the risk is not that high, you still need a trigger for enforcement. Did the pressure repeat after one clear restatement? If it did, execute the consequence. End the conversation. Decline the task. Leave the setting. Move to formal process. Reduce access. The purpose is not punishment. It is to make the boundary real. And if you messed it up, there is a clean recovery. Many people over-explain, apologize for the boundary, or negotiate against themselves. Reset with one sentence. I want to be clear. I am not available for X. I can do Y, or we can stop here. Now flip the lens, because power is not only something done to you. If people depend on your approval, money, access, evaluation, protection, invitation, or interpretation, your casual behavior has extra weight. Your jokes travel farther. Your irritation changes the room. Your ambiguity becomes work for others. Even your preferences may be treated as instructions. Power increases the duty to reduce interpretive burden. Name when you are deciding and when you are thinking aloud. Separate requests from requirements. Make refusal safe when compliance is optional. Do not make people pay a social tax for using formal process. Invite correction in channels where correction will not punish the speaker. Avoid private ambiguity in situations with dependency. Track whether the same people keep absorbing invisible costs. A powerful person can say, I never told them to do that, and be technically correct and systemically responsible. If every signal you send is treated like a command, you need cleaner signals. A few failure modes are worth keeping in mind. 1 is premature submission to rank. You confuse status performance with legitimate authority, and you comply too early. The recovery is to verify decision rights and scope, then comply only within that frame. Another is stating boundaries without enforcement. That turns limits into requests for mercy. Convert the limit into an action rule. If X continues, I will do Y. Then do Y. A third is over-escalating from one ambiguous signal. Sometimes a joke is clumsy, not predatory. Sometimes a delay is overload, not disrespect. Classify the behavior, check context, clarify once, and update only as far as evidence permits. Also remember audience mechanics. If harm happened in public, private correction often fails. The rank effect persists, because the audience never saw the correction. Make the minimum public correction needed to stop the effect. Then move details offline. The durable signal is not whether someone likes your boundary. The durable signal is whether they can continue the relationship, role, or decision process while respecting it.